Alright, what is up, ladies and gentlemen? Today we are going to talk about the second lesson that I have to teach you guys about Mortal Kombat 1. So this is coming from Mortal Kombat 11 players to Mortal Kombat 1. This is probably one of the most important things you need to learn. I don't understand why I didn't think about this before. This is the first thing I should have tested outside of the jump kicks in this game. And it is very, very simple. So I was playing my friend Blaze a few days ago. I was playing against his Reiko, and he was ducking all of my follow-ups off of, my pressure, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and show you what I'm talking about. So I would do a down one, and when I did a down one, he would duck my down one. Or not my down one, he would duck my follow-up after my down one. And you're probably wondering, hey Ops, like why are you doing down one and then like you're not doing anything afterward, like a mid or anything like that, right? And that's because in Mortal Kombat 11, we were taught that jailing your attacks or doing a frame trap would get you launched. That was a very common thing in Mortal Kombat 1 or Mortal Kombat 11, where you would do a button. I might even put a video up here, maybe, if I'm not lazy, where you would do a down one on hit, and you would go to do a button, whether it be your standing one, like that, or your mid, and they would time it where you would go to land your attack, and they would launch you off and up too. This is no longer possible in Mortal Kombat 1, right? If I do a down one and I do 1-1, this is guaranteed pressure. He can't get out of that unless he blocks, right? Now, a lot of people will be like, well, Ops, there's armor in this game. Well, that's actually not how armor works. The only time you can armor something, and I did a little test here, is if you're not plus enough, right? So for example, this down one is plus 12, right? If you look in the bottom left corner, I always keep my frame data up because I'm a math guy when it comes to fighting games. But as you can see here, it is plus 12, right? So what this means is if I do my, well, this is probably not the best example. I'm actually going to use back two because back two is slower. If I do my back two and Johnny tries to mash out of here, and I'll even show you really quick. If I do this and I do back two, I'll show you. Oh, will it work now? There we go. As you can see here, I'm actually trying to mash. Look at the button on the right. I'm trying to mash down one because it's 6 frames and I'm still getting launched, right? But the thing is, so this is what we call a frame trap because the back two comes out in 15 frames. If you look at the second hit, it's 15 frames, right? So what this means is Johnny can actually, if I could do it right. Oh my gosh. He can actually armor through that because it's a frame trap. It's not a jail. And what that means is, the reason why it's a frame trap is because mids hit mid, right? So if you're trying to down one or you're trying to mash anything, you can't because you're ducking and the mid is going to hit you. But what you can do is you can armor through it because armor starts up in a certain amount of frames. I don't know exactly when armor starts up, but I'll explain why that doesn't matter in a second. So if you try to do a mid and the mid does not come out around the same time, and I noticed this too when I try to do forward one, the same thing happened. Johnny, it might be because I mistimed it because it's plus 12 and she has a 12 frame mid, so it's exact frame. But Johnny will be able to armor through that because it's a frame trap. And what a frame trap means is that you can't mash a certain button, right? Because the down one's 6 frames, right? Her down one's plus 12. So if you do a 15 frame mid and Johnny tries the down one, you just subtract that, right? So plus 12, he has a 6 frame down one, you're plus 12, you subtract 12, and then you add, well, sorry, let me start over. So his is 6 frames, you have 12 frames, you subtract 12 because he's trying to do a 12 frame down one, and then you add your 15 frames from your plus, sorry, you add your 15 frames from the plus the 6 frames that you would be subtracting from Johnny's down one. Now that's really hard to, I probably made it really complicated, but long story short, all you really need to do, and actually easier way to do this, is what you do is you're plus 12, and then you add the 15, which means you have 3 frames. Johnny needs a 3 frame normal to beat your 15 frame back too, right? Because if you think about it, you just have to subtract 15 from 12, and then you get 3, and then Johnny has a 6 frame down 1. So 6 frames can't beat 3 frames. So you're able to beat his down 1 because you're hitting mid, and you're trapping him because he only has 3 frames to work with a normal. Now, where this is broken, this rule is broken, is in jailing, because you're plus 12, Katana can actually do a high, and Johnny won't be able to press a button because the highs are faster than the plus 12. So for example, I know this is very complicated, but just understand it this way, right? If I do it down 1 and I'm plus 12, right? I have a 7 frame stand 1. Since I'm right next to Johnny, the 7 frame stand 1's gonna hit him, right? Because I'm right next to him. But since I'm plus 12, that means that I have 12 frames to work with a high where he's jailed. That means he can't do anything. He's not even frame trapped, because if you subtract 12 or 7 from 12, right? You have what? 5 frames to work with. So that means you are actually -5. It's almost like you have, I'm not going to say you have a move faster than 0 frames, but literally it's impossible for Johnny to do anything except block, because for some reason block breaks this rule. That's just how Mortal Kombat works. But Johnny actually can't press another button, because when you subtract 7 from 12, you still have 5 frames that are just there. They're just empty frames that Johnny, he doesn't have enough frames to work with. He doesn't have a normal that's 0 frames, right? And since you're -5 frames, he can't do anything. That's what jailing is, right? And so we were doing this in Mortal Kombat 11, but the problem with Mortal Kombat 11 is that when you try to flawless block, or when you block, you break this rule. So for example, if I down 1 Johnny here, he can still block, right? See, he can still block. He can't mash a button, but he can still block. Well, the problem with this was in Mortal Kombat 11, you could flawless block during those block frames. So you could launch people trying to jail you, right? Now, the reason why this is important to understand is because you no longer have to delay your normals. What this means is I can always jail Johnny. Johnny cannot do anything here. The only option he has is to block. So if you do a down 1 and someone is ducking, that means you're not jailing, right? Because if they're ducking, they're gonna get hit. See how he got hit here? Because he's ducking. The only thing Johnny can do here is block. What this means is no matter what character you're playing, your opponent is always put in a strike throw situation when you are plus. He has no option. He cannot flawless block launch you. He cannot armor because he is jailed. He can't do anything. Armor requires frames. He doesn't have any frames because you've jailed him. He has no frames. Jailing means he cannot do anything but block. Anything but block. You need to keep this in mind because things like down 4 are super plus. See how this plus 16? I can still dash up and Johnny can't do anything. I'll show you. I might have to redo this video because I made it really complicated. It didn't really need to be this complicated. But long story short, the thing you need to know is that you no longer need to worry about delaying your normals. If you are plus, it is your turn. Your opponent cannot do anything as long as you use a high that beats the advantage that you are plus on. So if you're plus, 5, you obviously can't do a high because highs aren't 5 frames, right? But if you're plus 8 and I would say, yeah, 8 and above, you can always jail a high, which means your opponent cannot do anything but block. They cannot even armor you. So let me show you really quick what I'm talking about. So if I'm Katana here and I do like a down 4, Johnny can't do anything here. Trying to armor. There we go. That would have been me armoring. As you can see there, it's because Katana is plus 16. Her dash frames don't cover that 16 frames, and her stand 1 is 7 frames. So it is her turn. Johnny cannot do anything. I would even argue that she could probably use her mid there because her mid's 15 frames, and you don't have to move to use the mid. The mid's an advancing mid. I'll show you. It's an advancing mid, so he would still be jailed off the mid because she's plus 16, right? So the whole point of this video is that you no longer have to worry about your opponent launching you when you're plus. Stop delaying your throws. Well, you should still delay your throws if you're trying to shimmy, but for the most part, take the strike throw. If your opponent is ducking and disrespecting your offense, just take the strike throw. Like, do down one into dash 1-1, you know, or down one into whatever your high is. Katana has a 9-frame high too, or a 9-frame stand too. It gives her 40%, so I should always be doing down one into stand two. Oh, hold on. Let me try that again. Oh my gosh. Okay. Let's try that again. So as you can see there, like if Johnny ducks that, that's 40%, right? So that's guaranteed. That's a guaranteed jail, which means Johnny cannot do anything but block there, which means if he blocks, you can throw him. So if your opponent is ducking and you go to do a high, the best way to see this, right, is if your opponent is ducking and you go to do a high and the high goes over his head, that means you're not jailing. That means that you're not taking your turn back and you're letting your opponent do whatever they want, right? Because in this game, again, I want to stress that in this game, yeah, so like if you're doing this and then you do that and he ducks it, that means you're not jailing. This should happen. See how when I hit him, I dropped it again, but you get my point. I need to practice that combo, but yeah, as you can see here, like he's getting jailed. And that's 40%, right? So if they're ducking and your high goes over their head, that means you're not jailing, which means you need to take your turn back, because this isn't Mortal Kombat 11. You won't get launched for trying to jail. You can jail every time. He has no option. It is your turn. If you hit them and you are plus enough, it is your turn, jail. Practice this in the practice mode. Practice jailing your opponent. Eventually, obviously, they're going to block, and that's when you start doing the strike throw, and you can throw them in different directions depending on the character you're playing, or command grab them, whatever. But you should not be delaying your normals. There's not really much reason to do that unless you're trying to shimmy them. And even then, like, I would honestly just take the strike throw more, because you don't really need to shimmy in this game because you're not going to get launched for jailing. Your jailing is guaranteed. Always remember that. So anyway, that's all I wanted to share. Sorry, I made this really complicated. I might have to redo a video and make a really short version of this, kind of explaining why you don't need to delay your normals anymore. If your opponent is ducking your high after you do a down 1 on hit or a down 4 on hit, you're not playing the game right. MK11 is the only game where you needed to do that. This game, you don't need to do that. Just take the strike throw, play the strike throw game, play neutral. And yeah, that's it. That's everything. Hopefully this helped you guys, and I will see you guys in the next video for the next tip.